We are now excited to be joined by Andrew Stefaniak, headman at wildcatstoday.com. Andrew has been doing a phenomenal job over there covering Kentucky basketball here as the season has gotten underway and into conference play. Today, I want to talk with Andrew about a variety of different Kentucky basketball topics. But I wanted to start here, Andrew, with something that you and I discussed yesterday. I've been talking about on and off on my podcast quite a bit. Kentucky basketball has struggled this season with their defense. In my recap episode yesterday with the Mississippi State game, noted that the Bulldogs got 77 points, some of those in garbage time, but that second half as a whole, just not what you want to see out of Kentucky. You thought they were turning the corner in the first half, but just kind of some struggles there towards the end of the game. And I looked up and I was just like, when is this ever going to change? And you and I had a phone call about this yesterday about will it change, how it's going to play out. So I wanted to bring you on today to kind of get your thoughts on everything. So before I kind of like dive into the defense, though, mention the Mississippi State game. I actually made a note about this. Tell me what you thought about that win over MSU last night.
I thought it was a good win. A lot of people look at it's Mississippi State and Rupp Arena. Who cares? That's a top 10 defense in college basketball. That team is no joke. Now, offensively, they aren't great. And what's funny, Lance? I've had a lot of people reach out to me and text me and say, the defense was better last night. I'm going to be honest with you. I've been pushing back a little bit. So I had my buddy Carson text me and he said the defense looked good in the first half. It looked better. Yes, I agree with you. It looked better than what we saw against Texas A&M. What I was doing at the game, covering it in Rupp yesterday, I was sitting with the pen in every shot that Mississippi State took in the first half. I wrote down, was it a good open look for them, a good look, or did we contest it well? And about 66%, 67% of the shots, to me, and it's relative, that's it's an opinion thing, were open looks. Mississippi State's not a good offensive team. They had some open threes that weren't falling, some stuff they weren't getting to fall, at the rim. So it was a good win. In the SEC, it's plain and simple. A win's a win. I don't care who you beat, where you beat them. You got 18 of these games. It's a gauntlet. Every one is a win. That's a win is huge when it comes to seeding in March, when it comes to winning a potential title. It's all important. So it was a big win, and the defense was better. But I would argue it still has lots of ways to go before we start talking SEC tournament, NCAA tournament here in a few months.
I completely agree with you. And that's exactly what I said on my recap episode yesterday, where I was like, okay, we saw some different moments where it's like, okay, Kentucky's defense was better. And like you said, one of your friends texting you saying it was good. I said, but was it good? No, it was still pretty poor. At least it was something better than what we saw against Texas A&M, but it was still nowhere near where Kentucky needs to be, especially in that second half. It's just very frustrating, but I agree with you. I think it was a solid win. Antonio Reeves just kind of quietly going for 27 points again. It's just, I said this on yesterday's show, Tom Hart, who does most broadcasts for Kentucky on ESPN or SEC Network, just quietly goes whenever Reeves hits a free throw late in the game. He's like, and Reeves has 26 now. And just like kind of brushes over it, like doesn't even sound excited about the fact that the man's got 26 points against one of the best defenses in the country. Just kind of breezes over it. But yeah, I think it was a solid win for Kentucky. Like you said, you picking up a win, you win by 13. I mean, you can go home happy with that one. So Kentucky, they've got the offense. Their defense needs to start to trend in a much better direction. I guess we'll open up the floor there for the defensive conversation. What are some of the struggles that you've seen out of this unit so far this season, and what's kind of been the problem?
Well, speaking on defense, I think that I'm a big believer when it comes to defense. And this is, once again, this is a debate you could have. I've never asked you, Lance, where you stand on this, so we can have back and forth here, but I'm a big defense is effort guy. Now, there's skills you learn. There's different things that go with it. Growing up playing basketball, but that's my argument. Growing up playing basketball, like these guys, Rob and Justin, all these guys, every player, you've been doing these things since they could walk and dribble a basketball. They've been learning what it's like to play defense. When you get to this level, it's no longer learning how to guard one-on-one. That's not what it is to me. What it is to me is, offense is fun. Defense is tiring and hard. Are you willing to go down there and play hard defense? And Against Texas A&M, a lot of what I saw, and I thought Hugo played well. Ugonna and Yinso did a lot well, and a lot not well. It's one of those games where you're like, okay, I'm happy, but I'm not. And what he was doing that was a bit frustrating to me in that game was he really wasn't helping. I mean, Tyrese Radford was beating his man off the dribble every single possession, and Onienso wasn't really coming to help. And that was a little frustrating to me. I do think that Kentucky gets lost a lot on screens, leading to open threes. That last night. That happened in the first half, I'd say about 3 or 4 times. And Mississippi State missed pretty much all of them. When I'm talking open threes. And they missed a bunch of them. If they don't, that game could have gone a very, very different way. But you got to find a way to get through these screens, get around these screens, and get a hand in the face of these shooters because they're just taking open shots. You play at Tennessee, you play in Auburn. Listen, Dalton Connect ain't missing that shot. He is not missing that open three like some of these Mississippi State players did last night. So, defensively, I think they got to get better defending one-on-one, which Coach Cal has just beat that with a hammer for weeks, saying we got to be better one-on-one to guarding our guy. I think you got to get better help from your guys down low. And I think that you got to get better getting off of screens and getting out to three-point shooters. Those are the 3 things to me right now that have to be fixed.
I completely agree with you. Actually, I mentioned what you said yesterday to me on the recap episode. And actually, somebody else close to me that has coached before said the exact same thing, is that defense, anyone can play defense. It's just a matter of whether or not you want to put in the effort. And so I'm right there with you as far as where Kentucky is on defense. And here's the thing. I said this also on yesterday's show, and I want to know if you agree with me. At times, it looks like Kentucky's got the energy. They've got the excitement. They've got the pace. And I'm not saying that they can't pick this up mentally, but it does feel like there are some mental lapses where it's like, hey, man, you have to fight through that screen because they're going to pull the trigger on the other end. Hey, you cannot sag off because this man, even though he may not shoot well, is going to pull the trigger. And we know how sometimes teams shoot and rough. It's like you have to be able to stay committed on the defensive end and just not get lost and not lose focus. So I agree with you on the fact that it is just almost entirely effort based. You have to be able to put yourself in a position to make the play on defense. And it just comes with energy. It comes with the effort. But sometimes I feel like as well, Kentucky loses a little bit of sight of like what they're doing because we'll go to the example you were talking about Onienso with Tyrese Radford. There's that one play in the second half where Onienso just kind of gets walled off by his man while Radford kind of like broke his man. I think it was Radford broke his man down, drove to the hole and scored easily because Onienso couldn't actually get through his man to recover. It's like you, first of all, can't be in the position in the paint to have your guy seal you off like that. And then also once he does, unless he's grabbing you, holding you to where you can't move, take a step over and contest the shot. Like Onienso got there way too late to where I don't know if he was concerned with Radford dumping the ball off to his man which I don't think he would have been able to do with his positioning. You have to be able to kind of like think through these things a little bit quicker at times, I think, with Kentucky. And we've seen this issue not just with a couple of their big men, but also with their guards, right? With DJ Wagner, who I think Tom Hart brought up on the broadcast yesterday. Hey, opponents individually in ISO situations shoot 62% from the floor against him, which is rough. It's really, really bad. So Kentucky as a whole, they've got to be able to step up on that end of the floor. I love what you said there about the 3 things that Kentucky needs to do better. And Andrew, I want to kind of shift the conversation here. You're talking about this defense, the way Kentucky's playing, the offense still scoring well. Can Kentucky win an SEC title with the way that they're playing right now? I want to talk about that in just a second. Before I do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. And eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. You can keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers. Today's episode is also brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. At the start of the new year, every small business owner is asking themselves the same question. What is the one move that I can make that'll take my business to the next level in 2024? LinkedIn Jobs knows your success all depends on the team that you surround yourself with. And that's why they have created the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. This is not just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. And hiring is super easy when you have all of those quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get qualified candidates within 24 hours. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn also knows that small businesses may not have the time or resources to hire because they're wearing so many hats, but thankfully with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy. And you can post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That is linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, continuing along here on the Thursday edition of Locked On Kentucky, Lance Dawe, Andrew Stefaniak hanging out here with you. Really appreciate you checking out Locked On Kentucky. If you have not subscribed to the show already, whether that be on YouTube or on the podcast feed, wherever you are tuned in, please go ahead and do so. Andrew, before we move along, tell everybody where they can find your content and your socials, man.
Yeah, you can check out everything over at Wildcats Today. I mean, we're covering the team. I'm there in Rupp every night. I'm going to be following this team around wherever they are in March, in Nashville, wherever they are. I can't wait for it. So yeah, Wildcats Today, the website. Follow our socials, Wildcats Today, and then my Twitter personally is at Andrew Stefaniak.
Go give Andrew a follow on Twitter, and then make sure to check out his stuff over at wildcatstoday.com. Doing a great job over there covering Kentucky basketball, pouring in his thoughts alongside myself and actually Andy Patton, co-host of the Locked On College Basketball Podcast. So go check that out, wildcatstoday.com. So we're talking here about defense, Andrew, about some of the frustrations. I think we're on the same page here as far as like what the issue is, what needs to be fixed. And I want to kind of bring the conversation into well, can it be fixed portion of the talk here, because a lot of fans that I've seen online and some that I've talked to in person have said similar things. It's like, well, with the way that Kentucky's playing defense right now, they can't win an SEC title. They've got to be able to get to perform better. So they jump straight past, can it be better, by saying, well, if it's not, then this is going to happen and you're not going to be able to secure that SEC title. So Andrew, I wanted to ask you, with the way that Kentucky is playing, not just on defense, but as a whole, because there is a positive and negative side to this, obviously offense and defense. It's kind of funny how black and white it feels at times, but can Kentucky basketball take that step and win an SEC title with the remainder of their schedule? Because right now, Kentucky's sitting at what, 3-1 now in the SEC? I think they've got a legitimate shot here to make a push down the stretch. Tough road games. Can the Wildcats do it?
Looking at this, it's so funny. Defense is so important. You can't sit here and act like it's not. We all know what the defense means for this team. Now, I'll tell you this. I look at this and I go, if you can score like this Kentucky team can score, so I want to give both sides my thoughts here, because I do think defense is important. And the numbers, Lance, and correct me on the stat because I know you'll know it. What's the thing about the whole, you have to be Ken Palm this and this statistically to win an Addy? Do you have that stat? You know that?
If I'm not mistaken, I believe it's top 20 in offensive defensive efficiency. Yeah. It may be top 30. I'm not sure. But there are a couple of teams in this league, by the way, they're top 10 at both categories. Yes.
And it's safe to say that Kentucky obviously is not that defensively. So talking March Madness wise, the numbers are not in the Wildcats' favor. But it's just, with this offense, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't care. Now, do I want the defense to get better? Of course. Why not? Hey, this team, and I'm not asking for this defense to be top 10 in college basketball, because that's not going to happen. I just want it to be better, just competitive. So can this team win an SEC title the way they play defense? I still think they can because of the way they play off, that they are on the offensive side of things. They're just so good. Now, I think little things like boxing out, it'll go a long way if you can fix the little things. If you can box out against Florida coming up here in a few days, and you can do things like that that'll help you get individual wins. But as a whole, the way this team shoots the ball, if they're hot, I don't believe anybody in college basketball can beat them. Now, a game against a team like Houston, that would scare me. That would really scare me. The way they play defense and the Cats play defense, that would be a really interesting ball game. But to answer your question in a few short words, I do think Kentucky can win the SEC title, even though I think numbers statistically, like we said with March Madness and the KenPom, that stuff's against them. I just think the offense is at a whole nother level to where this team can make a run at the regular season SEC title, make a run at the SEC, tournament title in Nashville, and then make a run in March. But of course, the defense improving would make me feel a lot better about that. No question.
Yeah, so the numbers that you're mentioning here on KenPom, and I've talked about this so much that I've just beaten it to death on the show. I'm sure some listeners are probably sick of it at this point. Adjusted offensive and defensive efficiency are the two categories that are like the big ones on KenPom. Kentucky number 4 right now in the country, 4th best offense according to the KenPom ratings, 60th best defense, and that has taken a major dip over the past couple of weeks because at one point, actually, at the beginning of the SEC slate, Andrew, it was like hovering around like low 40s. Like, and I said, I did an episode where I was like, here are 5 things Kentucky needs to do in order to make this a successful SEC slate, like win it or have a really, really good year. And I said that they needed to crack the top 40 in defensive efficiency because the offense was going to carry the load. If you can get inside the top 40 and just be kind of like good to like slightly above average in the SEC, you can win a lot of games in this conference because of how your offense is going to score, and you'll look dominant in a lot of them as well. But they have slid, giving up 85 points to Florida, giving up 77 to a bad Missouri team, giving up 97 in overtime to Texas A&M, and 89 points in regulation to that Aggie squad, 77 points to Mississippi State, who can't shoot consistently, and giving up, 9 threes last night to the Bulldogs as well. And you look down the projections here for KenPom. If anybody has a KenPom subscription, you can go check this out yourself. If you don't, I'll just kind of describe it to you. They break down every single game and give a final score prediction for all of them. Like, here's what we think about these two teams in our computer model. Here's what would happen if they play. Here's the final score. And Kentucky's giving up 75, 75, 80, 83, 81 over their next few games. They've got games in here where they give up 81, 76, 79, 79, 86, 89. It's like you are expected here to kind of have a tear continuously in this defense. But you'll also notice, Andrew, something that you pointed out. They're also projected to win all but one of those games, which is against Tennessee, where they are projected to lose 81-80. So Kentucky's offense, I said, gosh, what did I say? I think I said if they can average at least 85 points per game, because they were averaging like 91, 92 before the SEC slate started. I said if they can average at least 85 points per game, they'll be fine. Yeah. That's where I said it. So 85 points per game, top 40 in defensive efficiency. Is that kind of where you would sit and be comfortable if you're looking ahead with all these games left?
I would. And here's the deal. An opponent scoring 80 points, it's a lot of points.
Yep.
But I'm going to throw a hypothetical at you, okay?
Okay.
Let's say Kentucky scores 90 and the other team scores 80. Who wins that game?
Kentucky wins that game.
They do. And that is my point. Now, let me ask you another hypothetical. Would you consider a giving up 80 points to Mississippi State a good defensive day? I'd say no. Would you agree with me on that?
Yeah.
But once again, if you score 90 and they score 80, I don't care. I don't. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, the defense has to be better. Because here's the deal. This has been my argument, Lance. I've written this in a lot of articles. That's fine and dandy. They can score 80 if we score 90. Yep. That argument is great until you get to the Sweet 16 and the shots aren't falling.
Yep.
And you lose. That is why the defense has to be better. I don't think the defense has to be better. I don't think this offense is going anywhere. I don't. I think you can win games scoring 90 and your opponent scoring 77. You obviously, that's not rocket science. Yes, if you score 13 more points than the opponent, you're going to win the game. But what I'm getting at here is my fear is a game where the offense just doesn't show up. And that's going to happen. It's, the shots aren't always going to fall. And, I think we talk about defense. What happened last night against Mississippi State? I said it a minute ago. There were a lot of open looks that didn't fall. These players aren't robots. Shots aren't going to go in sometimes, even with open looks. You're going to get lucky some games. You're going to get unlucky some games. Against Texas A&M, that Wade Taylor dude, he had some shots that were heavily contested, and then it wouldn't even touch the net. It'd go straight through, and then he'd have a wide open three, and it wouldn't touch anything. It'd be an air ball. I mean, This stuff's going to happen. It's part of college basketball. But that right there is a great point, Lance. Like you said, you reading those point totals that Kim Palm gives for the opponents. Okay, if they're scoring 77, 81, 73, I don't care. If we score 85 to 90, you're going to win the game. But that's where it gets scary. It gets scary to read it one more time. If you have a game, especially in March, where you fall asleep and you don't hit your shots, you will lose. That is the reason the defense has to be better right there.
Yeah, you've got to be able to find at least some, like, it doesn't have to, like you said, it doesn't even have to be good. You just have to find the ability to show the ability to actually get some stops and have a good defensive game. Because, like you said, once you get to that single elimination, if you screw up once, you're done. So find some sort of consistency on that side of the ball where at least you can prove, hey, we can have a night where we play good defense, because you're going to need it at some point, whether that be in a crucial SEC game here in the schedule that either gives you advantage in the standings or gives you a quad one win that'll be useful for seeding later on in the year, or it'll be in the NCAA tournament where you do face off against that team like a Houston, like a Tennessee, again, possibly in a Sweet 16 style, where you have to be able to step up and say, okay, we need to make stops consistently in order to get this win. Because like you said, you may end up in a situation where last year, where you had some apparently some wonky rims before you got the opportunity to play. Was that 2 years ago, or was that a year ago? Where before, I think it was a game it was the Kansas State game or the game before, where it was like they continued to have to adjust the rims like pregame and at halftime because they weren't level or something like that.
I remember that, but I don't remember when it was.
And both teams shot horribly because of it. It might have been the Providence. It was the Providence game, wasn't it? Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, that sounds right. I think that does sound right. I remember that. That was crazy, actually.
I agree with you on everything you're saying there. I think it makes sense. If you score more than your opponent, doesn't really matter. It's maybe like a 2019 LSU situation. Of course, I don't know if anybody on this roster is Joe Burrow. Maybe Kentucky's got 4 of them. I don't know. Maybe they got 4 like really solid quarterbacks, so to speak. So I want to continue this conversation. We kind of hinted at it a minute ago about Kentucky's upcoming schedule. They've got a chance to really start to build some momentum here over these next couple of weeks before they play a huge game in Rupp Arena at the beginning of February against Tennessee. Before we dive into that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. The NFL regular season is over. We have officially stepped into playoff action, but there is still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. In the app that they've got is super easy to use. There's so many different ways to bet, like live same game parlays. They've got a new Explore tab where you can find bets. You can also check out the Parlay Hub. Got a bunch of different popular parlays for you to check out and more on top of that. So you need to visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. That is FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. All right, wrapping up the Thursday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe, Andrew Stefaniak hanging out here with you. Want to talk a little bit about Kentucky's upcoming schedule. Got 4 games here before that matchup with the Tennessee Volunteers on February 3rd. Georgia at home, South Carolina on the road, Arkansas on the road, and Florida at Rupp. So you've got all 4 of those games against solid, I would say, to slightly mid-tier or underneath average SEC opponents. Right now, Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida looking pretty solid overall. Arkansas, I'm just kind of confused at what they've been so far this season. Just not been anywhere close to what Eric Musselman has had over the past few years. But Andrew, You look at all 4 of these games, and we talked about it a second ago. Ken Palm says Kentucky wins all of them, giving up 75, 75, 80, and 83 points. What do you see out of this 4-game stretch, and could the Wildcats possibly build some momentum here? Can they win all 4 of these?
So I had a big key, and it was go 2-0 this week. Cats are 1-0 right now. A Georgia team's coming to town, kind of similar to South Carolina. Nobody thought they were going to be great. Nobody thought South Carolina was going to be good. Nobody thought Georgia was going to be good. Relative. Like within SEC play, of course they're going to beat up on, St. Bonaventure, and but like when we get to SEC play, although St. Bonaventure is actually not a bad team, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But they've been okay teams. Georgia had Tennessee on the ropes. They choked there late. South Carolina is one team I haven't watched a ton of. I've watched a lot of Georgia. I've watched a lot of SEC basketball, but South Carolina just hadn't been on the TV much. But numbers wise, they've really exceeded expectations over there in Columbia. So that's a game. Do I think Kentucky goes 4-0 in this stretch? Should they go 4-0 in this stretch? Yes to both of those questions. But looking at this, it's Kentucky. I used to be that person that, Kentucky fans have this pride to them about the whole, when Kentucky comes to town, it's T-shirt day. And I used to kind of be annoyed by that back in the day. I was like, okay, let's not do that. But now, in all honesty, and I still don't say it, but I believe it. What did we see against Florida? I think an okay team showed up. Texas A&M, an okay team, played great. And I do think part of that has to do with the number 6, number 8, at the time, number 6 team against A&M. Now the number 8 team is coming to town. It's Kentucky. You want to beat them. People are excited. People don't get excited when Vandy comes to town. People get excited when Kentucky comes to town because they're a good team. So that makes playing on the road more difficult. It does. That's just the reality of the situation, especially against a Georgia. Fans are excited. They're better. South Carolina fans are excited. They are better. That is going to make these 2 games challenging. So do I think the Cats win? Yes, but you got to be careful. These teams want to beat you. They need a quad 1 win. They want to beat you bad. So you got to play well in those games. I don't think they struggle against Georgia and Florida. I just think this team's going to continue to play well in Rupp Arena. I really do. But those 2 road games, I think Arkansas is horrible, in all honesty, for lack of better words. Any Razorback fans listening, I apologize, just being honest with you.
No,
but going to Bud Walton is scary. I'm sorry, It just is. I don't care if you're playing, a 5U YMCA basketball team. I wouldn't want to play them in Bud Walton. And that's what you got going on here against Arkansas. So, bad teams can play well. And you don't want to run into that against South Carolina and Arkansas. So do I think they go 4-0 in this stretch? I do, but I think these games could be a little more interesting than maybe some are imagining right now.
So taking all of that information into account, you're looking at Arkansas, Florida, South Carolina, Georgia. Georgia right now 3-1 in SEC play. South Carolina 2-2, and then Florida and Arkansas both 1-3 out the gates here. I think Florida has had a little bit more difficult of a schedule, obviously playing Kentucky and Tennessee here to start out, who may end up being 2 of the 3 best teams, 4 best teams, I guess, if you include Alabama in this conference. But taking that into account, Andrew, out of these 4 games, what would you say is the most difficult game for Kentucky in this stretch? Is it that Arkansas game because of the fact that it's in Bud Walton, even though Arkansas may be the worst team? Is it South Carolina? Is it Georgia because they've gotten off to a hot start in SEC play? Where do you see this going? What's the most difficult game?
To me, it's the South Carolina game. And I don't think many would agree on that, in all honesty, and that's fair, but I'll give my reasoning. Georgia, they're playing good. Cinderella story, great. I think Kentucky wipes the floor with them in Rupp Arena. It's just, now you never know. Could Georgia hang around? I think even if they hang around, Kentucky wins. I think that Florida, they got dealt a bad hand to start the season. Ole Miss too. That was their other game they played. And Ole Miss is not. I still think they're a tad bit overrated, but they're still I think a top half SEC team. Yeah. So not the easiest draw for the Florida Gators. So I think they're better than 1-3, but I think the in Rupp Arena, I'm not as concerned. I just think that ranking the environments, what scares me more, going to South Carolina or going to Bud Walton? Bud Walton scares me more, but I just think Arkansas is so
That bad.
bad
That's
to
valid.
where this South Carolina team scares me the most of this, or a game scares me the most of these four. And I'll tell you this, I do think that Georgia and Florida will hang around in Rupp Arena. I think it's going to be similar to what we saw last night. Was the Missouri game. It's funny. We've had two final scores, 90-77, Missouri and Kentucky, Mississippi State. I was writing those articles. I was like, why does this feel weird? And then that's why. But I think you could see similar scores to that in those games. The Florida-Georgia game, they put up, 75, 80 points. Kentucky scores 90. So I think I don't see 25-point blowout wins here. I see, 15, 10-point wins. I think that they beat Arkansas by 10 to 15. And then the South Carolina game, I feel like it's going to be one of those, you just leave and you wipe your brow and you go, man, it's over. Thank the Lord we won by 4. That's how I kind of see this going. But South Carolina is the one that concerns me the most.
I think so, and I think I agree with the logic there. Is that Arkansas's got the more difficult environment, but I think that South Carolina is the better team, and you have to factor in the fact that they're probably going to have a really good environment as well.
Yes,
pulling up for this Kentucky game. If we're ranking these teams in terms of talent, I think Florida's the best team. I think
I agree.
Out of these four. So Florida and Georgia, I think, will give Kentucky problems. And this is something I've continued to say to the listeners here on the show. Like, listen, Kentucky could lose any of these games.
Yeah.
Like, we're like, it could happen. SEC play is difficult, but they're projected to win all of them. And so I think Kentucky beats Georgia. I think they end up beating South Carolina on the road. I think they beat Arkansas, despite that being a really difficult place to play. And I think they beat Florida again because they proved they could do it on the road once. And I think they can do it again at home. So right now, let's say that happens. Let's say Kentucky, what are they, 3-1 in SEC play? They'd improve to 18-3, 7-1 in conference play, and then you get Tennessee rolling in, and then you have a stretch of games after that where you'd like to think Kentucky's got a shot to win them against Vanderbilt, Gonzaga, and Mississippi. And Gonzaga has been a little bit of a disappointment this year, but you start to see things move forward for Kentucky in a way that gets you thinking about what they're going to do in the postseason. Because if you're able to pick up a win against a team like South Carolina, I think if that right now, if I'm not mistaken, that's close to or is a quad 1 win in the net rankings. Tennessee, if you're able to secure that one, that would be a quad 1 win. You're starting to build a strong resume, and you're looking at this team making a legitimate case at the beginning of March. So I'll say this, Andrew, now that we know that this possible stretch of wins is on the table, where do you see Kentucky landing in March? Doesn't really matter now, but I do just want to get your thoughts as far as seeding goes. Where do you think they land?
So South Carolina is, I just pulled it up. They're 69th currently in the net rankings. So that would be
top 75.
On the road, top 75 on the road. That is a quad 1 win. Now that could change, but between now and Tuesday. Well, maybe not because it's by Tuesday, but it could change when it all wraps up. But when it comes to seeding, and this is something you and I talked about on the phone the other day, I think if Kentucky can go 14-4 in SEC play, which would leave them with 6 losses, right? Because then the Kansas loss, the UNC Wilmington loss, 6 losses and however many wins. I'm not going to do math here because
it's like 25-6, right?
Yeah, so round there. If you have that record, I think this team is worst case scenario a 4 seed.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll be a 3 seed.
Okay.
I think that UNC Wilmington loss, I know you and I talked about it, it's not going to hurt Kentucky as much as we'd originally thought, but I do think it's going to keep you away from definitely being a 1, potentially a 2. I think a 2 seed would be really hard to pull. I think you'd have to lose 1. I think you'd have to go 15-3 in SEC play, maybe 16-2 with the Texas A&M loss already on the board. I think that's really hard to do. So I'm thinking 3 seed. And 4 seed is worst case scenario if you go 14-4 in SEC play. If you go 15-3, I think 3 seed is almost definite. If you can find a way to only lose 1 more and go 16-2, I think potentially we could be talking a 2 seed. So, but if I had to, throw a dart right now, I'd say they'll be a 3 seed. It's my guess.
Yeah, and now we were talking yesterday about that thing that Tristan Ferris had put out about like
Mhm.
running it through Torvik and seeing that,
Yeah.
oh, well, the UNC Wilmington loss didn't matter if you change it to a win or a loss. But I will say, while that is still a possibility, we don't know what the NCAA tournament's going to, or its committee's going to do.
Right.
And then also, when you go to the net rankings, and we've talked about this before on the show, it literally says when breaking down the quadrants, what they mean, says underneath it, the number of quadrant 1 wins and quadrant 3 and 4 losses will be incredibly important when it comes time for NCAA tournament selection and seeding. The net rankings say that verbatim. So maybe you do see Kentucky finish 25-6, have some strong have a strong case for a 2 seed, but get pulled down to that 3 seed line because they did lose that UNC Wilmington game. So there's a variety of things that could happen. I think that Kentucky's in that range. Do I see them getting up to a 1 seed? Probably not, unless they just go ballistic and like win every single game from here on out. Um, who knows, that could happen. But yeah, I think I'm right there with you, Andrew. So I think that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. Andrew, one more time, tell everyone where they can find your content and socials.
Yeah, check out the work over at Wildcats today. We got a lot going on over there, covering this team hard. At all the games, doing all that. So we got a lot of great folks helping over at Wildcats today, Lance included. It's a lot of fun doing it, covering this team. It's my first season covering Kentucky in person. And all you readers, maybe listeners that read as well, I really appreciate it. But yeah, check over at Wildcats today. You can follow the Twitter for the website over at Wildcats Today on X/Twitter. And then you can follow me on Twitter at Andrew Stefaniak.
Yeah, please go give Andrew a follow. He's been doing a great job covering Kentucky basketball. So, Andrew, one more time, really appreciate you hopping on, man.